All right, folks, it is 6 p.m. I'm just going to share my presentation. 1 second. All right.
Okay, full screen.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Before we begin, I just want to note that tonight's meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube. So for those who may not wish to be visible publicly, you may want to consider putting your camera off. Quorum for tonight's annual meeting is 2.5% of the membership, and we have a total of 523 members. So quorum is 13 members. So far, there are well over that, and folks continue to stream in. I know that there are over 30 now, so we'll use that number for the time being, but for minute purposes, perhaps 5 minutes from now, once the meeting gets started, we'll record that number as the number for quorum. So because we have achieved quorum, I can now call to order the Pride Toronto 2024 annual meeting. We are fortunate to also have with us today a number of guests, Dr. Ruth Green to lead us in the opening ceremony, our auditor from Crowe Soberman, Shandor Gauthier and Rachel Cairns, and our lawyer from Faskin, Sophie McRae. Members of Pride Toronto's board and staff are here this evening to assist with the meeting, as are the team of ASL interpreters, live transcriptor, live captioner, and of course our team from Get Quorum. My name is Grant Gonzalez. I use he, him pronouns. I am one of the co-chairs of the board of directors, and I'll be chairing the annual meeting and sharing these duties with my fellow co-chair, Leslie Lee Kam. So I'm just going to run through a few pieces here. First, accessibility features. As mentioned, ASL interpretation is provided and spotlighted. There's more information on that in the coming slide. Transcription services are available. Accessibility requests. If you have any requests, please put it in the Q&A function and we will try to triage. And presentation of motions. All motions will be included in the presentation slide. If there are new motions that come up, I will take a minute to type them out and put them on the slide so everyone can view them. Okay. ASL etiquette. ASL interpreters have been secured for this meeting. If you require the service, sorry, Zoom is cutting off my view. If you require the service, please look for the interpreters, as I mentioned, who are spotlighted. You may pin the interpreters to your screen at any time by bringing your computer or mouse to the interpreter's Zoom box and select pin. If you are speaking, please remember the following. Speak clearly and avoid speaking too quickly to assist the interpreters in translating efficiently. One person to speak at a time. Interpreters are neutral and abide by the code of conduct. And please speak directly to deaf and hard of hearing individuals, not the interpreters. And harm reduction, if you or someone sorry, there's a bit of a typo here there, but if you or someone are experiencing an emotional response to the content or tone of this meeting, please, and require harm reduction services, please visit the Ontario Harm Reduction Network, and the website is there, https://ohrn.org/resources. And if you are struggling with your mental health, please use your phone to dial 988, which is the Government of Canada's crisis line. I will now pass it over to Leslie Lee Kam to lead us in the land acknowledgement.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Leslie Leecam, and I'm here with Robin, one of my trusty mobility devices. And I am doing the land acknowledgement as a Carib Indigenous person from Trinidad. It is my responsibility to honor and pay respects to the land on which I live, love, dance, and love. This land has nourished me for more than 55 years. It's nourished me physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And I acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Huron-Wendat, and this land is home to many diverse First Nations, including the Inuit and Métis people. And we also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaties, which are signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. And when I do a land acknowledgement, I also do a call to action. So it is all of our responsibilities to ensure that Indigenous and Two-Spirit people enjoy the same human rights and privileges that we enjoy and take for granted. Please give up your time volunteering with Indigenous organizations and Two-Spirit organizations. And if you can, please also help financially with your support.
Thank you, Leslie. I will pass it over to Osmel to lead us into the African ancestral acknowledgement.
Thank you, Grant. My name is Osmel Gedamains. I am from the Dominican Republic, and I am a person of African descent. I am committed to continually acting in support of and in solidarity with Black communities, my communities, that's seeking freedom and reparative justice in light of the history and ongoing legacy of slavery that continues to impact Black communities here in Canada. As part of this commitment, I would also like to acknowledge that not all people came to these lands as migrants and settlers. Specifically, I wish to acknowledge those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. I pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent.
Thank you, Osmel. I would now like to invite Dr. Ruth Green to lead us through the opening ceremony. By way of introduction, Dr. Green is an associate professor in the School of Social Work at the York University and has served as the co-chair of the Indigenous Council at York University and the special advisor to the president on Indigenous initiatives. Dr. Green is a citizen of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and is from the Ganyan-Gehaka Nation and is a member of the Turtle Clan. Thank you for taking the time out of your evening, Dr. Green, and the floor is yours.
Saigo, Ganadaleho, Ruth Nonyos, Haudenosaunee Yogongwe, Ganagahaga, Nagawatasota, Wakayeta. I am very grateful to be here tonight. I realize that I'm not visible right now, either on the YouTube or in the meeting. So I wanted to start with sharing this dish with one spoon wampum belt. So I'm holding my replica wampum belt, but know that you cannot see me right now. But this wampum is the treaty and the territories that we sit upon, the land anywhere that the Great Lakes drain. And I've been taught that this area that is covered under the Great Lake, or the dish with one spoon, these are the laws of the land that have been here since time immemorial. And it's imperative that as we come together and as we occupy this space, and I use the word occupy not to say that only non-Indigenous people are here occupying. we are all taking up space. But when we take up space, we have responsibility to engage and remember the teachings of the land, not the laws of a nation state, but the teachings and laws of a land. And as I've been taught, the dish with one spoon has 3 simple teachings about the dish. I can talk about this for hours, and that's not what we're going to do tonight. But the dishes, we are taught that we never take more than our share. So here's a wampum. I now see I'm visible. The wampum, never taking more than our share, is about equity, knowing what is our responsibility and what we shall be taking, because we all come to these spaces with different needs and different things that we require to be in community. So we all deserve access. We're also told to ensure that there's enough for everybody. When there's not enough to go around, it is our responsibility to make sure that everybody will be able to access enough to survive. We are also told not to steal or foul the dish. In not stealing or fouling the dish, it is important to remember to care for the spaces and places that we occupy. Also, in a long, long story about the spoon, when our great peacemaker brought us into the Confederacy of the Haudenosaunee. These are Haudenosaunee teachings that have been for over 1,000 years, or close to 1,000 years. That when we were brought in, we were told to bury our weapons, that we need to come with peaceful, kind words and intentions. And that spoon, when you hear the dish with one spoon, that spoon is to remind us that we do not need to bring weapons into our ceremony spaces. And this is a ceremonial space. This is a gathering of community. And so as we come into this space, remember, we're not all going to access or need the same access. And it is our responsibility to know what we need, as well as to ensure that everybody gets space and everybody gets place. And to come in with no weapons, no hard words. Difficult questions and hard questions are different than harsh and mean words. And that is, as I've been taught, when we come in with the dish with one spoon, knowing this is the teachings of this land, we have a responsibility to be careful and kind to ensure everyone is supported. In that, I acknowledge that these are the teachings of the Haudenosaunee, the Confederacy I come from, but as a shared territory with the Anishinaabe and many other Indigenous nations, we build new community. As Two-Spirit or Indigiqueer communities, these are important for us to take responsibility to gently and kindly work together. And so as we are here in this space, in this place, in this moment in time, I reflect back that many of us come from locations and places where colonization has greatly impacted us all. And in that, we are resisting. And resisting is pride. And I always try to remind people that we are our ancestors' greatest dream. The queer communities that could not speak, the Two-Spirit people that were harmed and hurt, we are their ancestors and we're their dream. But the work we're doing, the work you're doing tonight, is for our descendants because we are their greatest hope. And so as you make decisions, as you gather tonight, remember that there's a responsibility to think of the generations to come and how you can gently, carefully provide for them. So Nyawa, and I'm, here to support in a gentle, kind way.
Thank you, Dr. Green, for opening up this space in such a thoughtful and kind way, and of course, again, for taking the time out of your evening to be with us today. I'm going to reshare my presentation. And sorry, this was my mistake. Just moving forward, when there are speakers, I did not know that I needed to stop the presentation. I will do so moving forward. I just got the note a little late, so my apologies for that. When there are speakers, I will stop sharing my presentation, and then I'll restart once those remarks are completed. 1 second here. All right. I'm going to pass it back to Leslie to go through our community guidelines and other shared principles.
Thanks, Grant. Hi, everybody. Just to build on what Dr. Ruth Green just shared with us, and thank you, Dr. Ruth. Those were very kind and sensible words that you just gave us, and the blessing and the opening. We continue in the spirit of kindness, caring, and compassion with each other. And as Dr. Ruth said, that we build on what's happening here tonight for our future rainbow identified generations to come, because of the present state in which we find ourselves and the challenges we're all facing, especially our trans brothers and sisters. We ask that people are kind, as I said earlier, and just to enjoy the meeting and to, chat with each other if you would like in the chat. That's what it's there for. So that's just going to move us along in terms of how we're going to take care of each other during this meeting. Self-care is essential. I can't stress that enough. If you need to take a break, please do so. Hydrate, please, as much as possible, be respectful and courteous when posing questions or making comments. We ask that you listen with open hearts and open minds. And in terms of the length of the meeting, and everybody would like to have something to say, please be as concise as possible, one person speaking at a time, and to be mindful of sharing so everyone can participate. And as much as possible, please stay on topic. And I know there are tough questions that are going to be asked. We welcome constructive criticism and remarks, but we do ask again, please, no personal attacks. I'm going to end by saying kindness, caring, and compassion and respect are what we are asking for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm going to pass it now over to Get Quorum for a quick overview, and I think a vote test to make sure everything's working. So I'll stop sharing and pass it over to Get Quorum.
Great, thank you, Grant. Let me just grab my screen. Perfect. So everyone, my name is Amanda Bustard. I'm your meeting host on behalf of Get Quorum, and I'm just going to review a few things for you to know how you can participate tonight. For the best experience, you should be joined via Google Chrome if you're on a computer or laptop. And if you're on a phone, a tablet, or an iPad, you should have the meeting open in the Zoom app. When you join the meeting, you would have had the option to join audio by computer and also allow Get Quorum access to your microphone. This is a crucial step if you wish to participate in any open Q&A sessions, so please make sure you have completed this step before we move on. If you're not sure where to find that, on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you should see an audio setting button, and you can choose your audio settings. Or you can leave the meeting and just come right back in, and that should give you the prompt once again. But any technical issues you may have, please submit them into the Q&A box or the chat, and I will provide you with direct support. So one way you will participate is through the virtual hand raise. At the bottom of the screen, you should see the raise hand icon, and if you click on it once, your virtual hand will be raised. If you click on it a second time, it will be lowered. You will be using your virtual hand raise in order to move or second a motion. or to participate in dedicated Q&A sessions. So if I could get everyone to find that button and click on it so we know that it's working properly and that you are able to participate, that would be wonderful. Thank you all so much. As I mentioned, next to that raise hand feature is the Q&A box. Please use the Q&A feature to type questions for the panelist, as well as technical support related questions. A panelist will be monitoring the Q&A box, and they will also receive a full report on all questions submitted after the meeting. So during the meeting, we have a number of voting items to discuss and to vote on, and we will be using our Get Quorum software. I'm going to just take a moment to do a test. So on the right-hand side of your screen, you should see the meeting portal. And it looks like my example on the share screen. On the bottom of that side, you can see the vote button. When the questions go live, the vote button will flash, letting you know that the vote is now live. I've just submitted a test vote so everyone can kind of have a look at what it would look like. But if you are on a mobile device or joined via the Zoom app, you'll just have to go back to that email. It was just sent out now, and it has a message or a subject line that says cast your vote. When you click or open that email, there's a blue box that says vote in your meeting portal. And then when you open that, it gives you the web page that's dedicated to your voting platform, and you will be able to cast your vote from there. All votes will be on the same web page. They will just refresh when we come to a new item. So once you've made or seen your vote pop up, you can make your selection and then hit the blue next button in order to confirm, and then your vote will be submitted. So if you have any issues with that, I do see a number of test ballots are being submitted, so that's wonderful. But if you have any troubles and you need some support, please do let me know in the Q&A box, and I will provide you with that support. So that's all I have for you, Grant. Thank you very much. Moving on to you again.
Perfect. Thank you. I got a chance to test my own voting too. So let me reshare for some last housekeeping items. There you go. So chat and mic function, when members are recognized to speak, they will have the option to turn on their camera and mic if they wish. Oh, mic for sure, but camera if you wish. General chat, it's open for communications, but we will not be actively monitoring the chat. However, you will see at times that there will be messages from the chat administrator, reminders, copy and paste of motions potentially, so on and so forth. And you probably see some of that coming through already. Q&A chat box. Sorry, I've just lost my notes here. Second. Members can type in your questions to the Q&A chat box. Questions that are relevant specifically to the individual will likely receive a written response from the board or a staff member. Questions of relevance to all members will be called up by the chair, and whether it's the chair or executive director to provide a response, will determine that based on the question. And members can also raise procedural queries, points of order, points of clarification, and these will be flagged by the chair accordingly. I will do my best. It's not a perfect system virtually. Oops. Sorry, I don't know what's going on here. Because I am sharing the presentation, so I don't necessarily always see hands raised or the chat box. So I might need assistance from board members or staff to call those out as they come. Okay. We did the Get Quorum overview. We are guided by Robert's Rules of Order. So movers and seconders, I will use the first and second hand raised, and we've all tested that already. Proposals to amend motions are allowed, but new business with respect to actual motions are not are out of order. However, if there are topics that we wish to discuss, there is room for that and other business. Any and all topics are welcome there, and of course, there's Q&A after each portion of the agenda. So points of order are procedural. Points of information are questions for information on process or content of a motion, and points of privilege generally are about conduct or personal needs. So there is time allotted in the Q&A for each agenda item. Basically, 1.5 minutes to ask a question and for us to provide a response. We'll try to do it 2 by 2, so 2 hands to submitted. And of course, we'll prioritize those who have not asked a question prior, and then time permitting, circle back to those with questions, just to make it fair and accessible to as many people as possible. Okay, we get to test the vote in a formal way. We got 2 motions up, and the first one is to appoint Nicole Falcone, August Mestron, and Carlos Torres as note takers for the 2024 Pride Toronto annual meeting. We'll ask for a mover and seconder. I see Shimin Baraksai and Jason Amel as moving and seconding. And I'm going to pass it over to Get Quorum to get the vote started.
Perfect, thank you. I'm now going to launch that vote. I did see a number of successful votes in the test. So we're going to start with 2 minutes on the clock. So in the same place that you did conduct your test vote, you should see the updated motion that is currently on the table for the appointment of note takers. Please go ahead and cast your vote. And if you're having any issues, you can refresh or reload your browser, or as I said, you can access the email that was sent out that lets you know you can cast your vote now and submit your vote through that web page. And we're looking like we're doing really well. So thank you, everyone. If you do have any issues, please use the chat or the Q&A box to just let me know, and I can provide you with support.
So while we're voting, as we warm up with the system, we'll give it some time just so folks get familiar with the system. You know, some of us are able to vote through the platform itself on Zoom. I, for example, have to go to my email, so we might need to navigate that. And then once we get into a rhythm and everyone's comfortable, we might take less time to vote if everyone is comfortable with that. But of course, if there are issues, we're not going to speed things up just for the sake of it. We will make sure to address any of those. But please do let us know if you have.
Okay, that vote has now ended, and we just need a few moments to finalize that vote, and then I'll share the results on my screen.
Thank you. see some folks might have difficulty voting. Your best bet is to go into your email, which you access this meeting, and through the email you registered. You will get an email there that the subject line will say, cast your vote, and what the motion is. In this case, it's to appoint those three folks I mentioned to be note takers. So you'll have to do that every time. Click vote in your meeting portal. The motion will come up if you haven't voted already. And then you can vote and then submit that way. It's probably the surest way to make sure if you don't see that voting platform on Zoom.
Okay, we're bringing up those votes in just one moment.
Okay. So we're just checking in with Get Quorum. Are we putting up the vote results?
Yes, I'm going to share it right now. Sorry about that. We're just tabulating with the proxies. So there were 67 votes in favor and 3 against.
Thank you. The motion is carried. I'm just going to share my screen for the next motion. We got a few coming up, so bear with us. Not that one yet. Next one is to appoint Get Quorum as scrutineers for all voting results at the 2024 Pride Toronto annual meeting. Can I get a mover and seconder? Robert Chevalier, thank you. And seconder is Osmel. Thank you, Osmel. Okay,
Perfect.
we can get that vote launched.
You bet. So that vote is now live. As I said, you'll go to the same page that you just conducted the last vote. If it hasn't updated, just hit your refresh or reload on your browser setting, and you should see it pop up for yourself. Oops. Excellent. We do have quite a few votes coming in. We'll just give it a few more seconds for everyone to get comfortable with the voting platform, and then after this, we should be able to cut the voting time down. Make sure you hit that next button in order to confirm your vote, please.
Amanda, I just see a question here in the Q&A. Any chance we can just enlarge the results when they come up?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, that vote is now closed, and we're just going to go ahead and tabulate those results right away for us.
while that is happening, let me reshare my screen. Nope, that's not what I want to share. Sorry, 1 second. So the next item is to approve the agenda of the 2024 Pride Toronto annual meeting as it was presented and circulated in the notice of meeting package. I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder, and then we'll wait for the vote results, and then next we'll open up the floor for discussion or questions. So first, can I get a mover and seconder for this motion? I see Byron Jr. Thank you. And Henry Dyke, thank you so much. And then we'll pause there, wait for the results, and then open up the floor to discussion.
Perfect. I do have the results right now, Grant. So
Thank you.
for the appointment of Get Quorum as scrutineers, there were 66 votes in favor, 6 against, and 1 abstain.
Thank you. So that's 450. Oh,
Sorry, 66 in favor.
66 in favor. Perfect. So the motion is carried. Thank you, everyone, for your indulgence. I'm going to open up the floor now to questions about the agenda. I see Glenn Knight, you have your hand raised. Not sure if that was for moving seconding or if you have a question.
So Glenn, I'm just going to prompt you to unmute. You can go ahead and accept the prompt or hit your space bar, hold your space bar down. Or if you don't have a question, you can lower your virtual hand. I'm not seeing you unmute. I'm going to prompt you again. I'm not seeing Glenn unmuting.
Okay, so perhaps we'll move on then. Glenn, if you have a question, perhaps put it in Q&A chat, or that might just be a hand raised for moving and seconding. So maybe get quorum folks if you, oh, and hand is lowered. Perfect. So seeing no questions in the Q&A box or with hand raised, we can proceed with the vote on the motion.
Okay, perfect. So this is the approval of the minutes, right, Grant? Just so I'm on the same.
No, sorry, of the agenda.
Oh, the agenda. Sorry, perfect. Glad I'm.
No problem. No problem.
Here we go. Okay, perfect. Thank you, everyone. So that vote should now be live on your screen. And as I said before, you can cast your vote on that webpage or on your meeting portal. And if you have just joined us, if you have not yet voted, there should be an email that is being sent to you that says you can cast your vote now. Inside that email is a blue box that says vote in your meeting portal, and that will open up the web page that is specific to your membership, and you can cast your vote. And you can save that page because the rest of the voting for this evening will occur there as well. Okay, we still have a number of votes to come in and we have about 50 seconds left. So just a reminder to go to your voting page and hit that next button to confirm.
Grant, you're muted.
Of course. There is a question in the Q&A box. Is the flashing voting icon in the top right corner of the page not sufficient? And I was just saying, I'm not sure I understand the question, but maybe Amanda, you might be better placed to provide a response.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question, and that flashing vote icon on the top does indicate when a new vote has started. So once you see that flashing and you click on it on your screen, the meeting portal page will open for you. But if you're asking, why other people aren't using it, if you're joined through the Zoom app, they require outside participation. So going to that email and opening the web page. But thank you for that uh, query. Okay, so that vote has now ended. We're going to go ahead and get our results.
And while that is being tabulated, I will share my screen again for the next motion. We'll get a mover and seconder, and then once after we get the vote for the last motion, then we'll open up for discussion and then proceed onward.
Okay, I have the
Oh,
results.
just
If you
one
want.
second, Amanda.
Okay, let's go ahead.
Yeah, so the next motion is to approve the minutes of the 2023 Pride Toronto annual meeting held on January 25th, 2024. Can I get a mover and seconder? Glenn Knight moves and Cecile Devines seconds. Thank you. And we'll open up the discussion in a moment, but I'll pass it back over to Amanda to share the results.
Excellent, thank you. So for the approval of the agenda for the 2024 meeting, we had 65 votes in favor, 4 against, and 2 abstain.
And the motion carries. Thank you so much. Next up are the minutes. So we already have a mover and seconder. Open up the floor now to any questions or comments or revisions if necessary. I'm not seeing anything in the chat, the Q&A box at the moment. No hands raised. Give it 2 seconds, maybe longer than 2. Okay, let's proceed on with the vote, Amanda.
Okay, perfect. So the clock has now started. That vote is live for the approval of the minutes from the meeting held January 2024. Please do cast your vote now.
While folks are voting, we will have a bit of a reprieve from motions because the next item up is the presentation of the annual report and joint reports from the executive director and co-chairs. We won't start that until after this.
Okay, votes are coming in quite quickly, I think, everyone. I think we've all gotten the hang of it. So we will give you 30 more seconds to submit your vote and hit the next button, and then we will move on with the results.
And just a reminder, folks, because I don't know if there are people coming in late. If you're not seeing the voting platform through Zoom and you'll see that flashing box, you'll have to go back to the email that you used to register for this annual meeting. You'll always get an email to vote on a specific motion, and that's what I have to do. So I will always have to go back to my Gmail. This motion is to approve the minutes. Click that email. It's in a blue box. It says vote in your meeting portal. You click that, and if you haven't voted already, the motion will show up there, and then you can select whether you're for or against or for or withhold. submit, and that's probably the best way to do it if you're not seeing it through the Zoom portal.
Okay, perfect. I have those results. I'll just share my screen. There were 65 votes in favor, 3 against, and 2 abstain.
Thank you, Amanda. The motion carries. Appreciate your indulgence, everyone. I know going through motions is fun. Next up is the presentation of the annual report and joint reports from the executive director and co-chairs. I'm just going to quickly share my screen, but then I want to make sure that we're able to see Leslie, Kojo, and my, well, you're seeing enough of me, but here I am. 1 second when I share the presentation. I'm just doing so so that you can see the topics that we like to cover. So top of mind for so many of us is the current political climate, especially in Canada and the United States, and the rightward shift that we are all experiencing that impacts to us LGBTQI plus community. There's some discussion we'd like to have about finances and funding, ongoing challenges we face in an environment where there are escalating costs and limited funding available for not just us, but many nonprofits, private organizations, and otherwise. We did want to provide a quick update on our community impact within the 2S LGBTQI plus communities. And of course, a quick overview of the 2024 Pride Festival. So I'm going to stop sharing now so you can see all of us. And maybe I'll pass it over to Kojo to lead this discussion.
Thank you, Grant. And I would like to start for anyone that is joining us that might have any visual impairment. Kojo Modest, no pronouns. I am a dark-skinned male presenting, small facial hair, wearing glasses, wearing a brownish checkered jacket with a red shirt under. I also would like to start by just acknowledging that as we are here today, many queer bodies are being persecuted all over the world. I want to acknowledge all of my queer siblings across Africa, the Caribbean, Asia, Latin America, and other parts of the world, the Middle East, that are constantly having to fight. Also acknowledging, our neighbors to the south, our trans siblings that are facing continuous hardship under this new administration. Here at home, our siblings that continue to have to fight. So just really want to acknowledge and just send them some love wherever they are. So starting with again, the current political climate here at home and south of the border and across the globe, we are seeing a rise in hate that is directed to our communities. And as Pride Toronto, we continue to stand up, we continue to make statements, we continue to fight, we continue to be an advocate, not just here at home, but a global statement, us being the second largest Pride festival in the world. I truly believe that we have a responsibility to all of our other siblings to stand up, to be a voice for the voiceless, to be that group that is going to say, you know what, enough is enough. So we're going to continue to work with all of our colleagues from coast to coast, from borders to borders, to ensure that the 2S LGBTQ community does not move backwards, but we move forward. In terms of financial and fundraising, just really want to emphasize that since joining the Pride Toronto, November 2020, year after year, I have seen nothing but an increase in the cost of doing business. From small things like security, noise auditors, porta potties, fencing, and the list goes on. All of our AV systems. we have not seen that increase in terms of revenues. So this continues to be a challenge. This is something that the board, myself, the senior leadership team, and staff are working tirelessly to address. And we will talk more about that during the financial statements. In terms of, towards LGBTQ and community impact, we signed a MOU with two Indigenous groups 2 years ago, and this is continuous work that we do with Two-Spirit people of the First Nation and Indigiqueer. For us, this part of the work to show that we are truly working on rebuilding that relationship that was broken. And I have to say, I really thank the board for continuing to support me in this area, because this is something that, we may not have done the damage, but we're responsible for correcting the wrong. We have had some very successful partnership, and the one that I really want to highlight is the partnership that we had with Friends of Handlands. As a result, we now have Toronto has the longest rainbow walkway in the world. Together, we are making history. Hanlan's Point is a very important place for the queer community. And this year, we really working with Friends of Hanlan's and other partners. We really help to amplify that. And, I had someone from New Zealand, say to us, oh, we heard of the walk, and people are coming just to be able to put foot on that walk. And again, thank you to Friends of Hanlan's, Travis and others for making this happen and continuing to work with us. Our International Impact Fund, friends, Pride Toronto is proud to have its own pot of money, $30,000, that is distributed to, Pride organizations and queer organizations, predominantly in the Global South, where it is still illegal to be in love with someone of the same gender. And as a result, this is will be our third year where we distribute $30,000. And folks may ask, Kojo, why are we even supporting others when we need money? And, for many of our siblings, receiving up to $1,500 to have an event, to have a safe event, to bring community together, it means a lot. And this year, 2024, we had impact in Africa, in Asia, Pakistan, in the Caribbean, in Latin and South America. We had a group in Colombia, that a queer organization that used that to learn English. We had prides formed as a result. So again, thank you. And this has been led by our community engagement manager that continues to bring all of this amazing work together. Community Connect. We have said, I have heard from so much of you that Pride goes beyond downtown. And one of the things that we have been demonstrating is that Pride is represented throughout Toronto. We are not called Downtown Pride. We are called Toronto Pride. And we had 3 very successful Community Connect programs: Scarborough, Etobicoke, and North York. And this is something that we're going to continue to do for folks that may just don't want to be Downtown Festival weekend. We really go to the community and bring Pride outside of downtown. It's another thing that we're very proud of and will continue to do. Our diversity as it relates to our artists. It's something that the programming team needs to be proud of. It's something that all queer artists in Toronto need to be proud of, because just around 78% of our artists are BIPOC. Just around 98% of our artists are local Toronto artists. The diversity in art form that is presented, it's phenomenal. And when I speak to the program manager, and now I can use language as genre of music. This was not something that you would have heard coming from me. You know, making sure that drag queens and drag kings are represented, making sure that, we're not just having individual performance. How are we identifying groups? And all of those amazing things. And I really want to thank the program team for pushing that envelope and also pushing me as executive director and as leader of the organization outside of my comfort zone in understanding the needs of the community. Oh, have mercy. I mean, this is a tagline that I have, and we could not do this without our volunteers. And I am telling you, our volunteers showed up like they have never before, with over 700 volunteers on festival weekend. We could not do this without our volunteers. And I want to tell you that the volunteers looked and represented Pride, the rainbow of us, the diversity that we all bring in relation to race, gender, able-bodied, and folks with disability. Everyone was welcome to volunteer and contribute to a successful 2024 festival. And I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Silver and gold have I not, but the love that I have is what I want to give to all of our volunteers. We have also had a significant and continue to have a significant impact on the local economy. And once upon a time, I was told that I am speaking conservative language when I speak to the return of investment on the dollars that we receive. With over 3 million visitors during Pride Month, over $473 million added to the GDP, close to 200 million in taxable revenues, over 4,000 jobs created. Folks, we continue to be the largest festival in Canada, and the economic impact that we have continues to build our economy, both at all three levels, at the city, the province, and the federal level. And I do believe that they all have a responsibility in providing us with more. And these are ongoing conversations that we will continue to have. I want to take this opportunity to thank the 3 elected officials in the Toronto Centre, Rosedale. And they have really played a very important role in advocating, both at the City Council, the provincial, and the federal level. So thank you for continuing. Yes, the queer community goes beyond downtown, but you have definitely stood up and be leaders and I would say one of the largest towards LGBTQ community ridings in Canada. I want to take this opportunity to also thank my amazing team. This is not one person. This is about a team of hard working and dedicated staff that shows up day in and day out during the coldest winter days and the hottest summer days, because they believe in what we're doing. So I want to thank the staff. I want to thank the board. I want to again thank all of our volunteers. But folks, I also have to thank all of our sponsors and donors. We are able to say to our artists, you will not be paid less than this. All of our artists were paid on time once they submitted their invoices on time. We're able to do this because of the level of sponsors that continues to show up. I know we will not take monies from individuals that have not demonstrated a commitment, a real commitment, not a fake commitment, a real commitment to the 2S LGBTQ plus community. So again, thank you to our sponsors, our donors, and our contributors. to all of our members that continue day in and day out to put your trust in us. Thank you. Thank you to my board, for continuing to put the trust in my leadership. Thank you. Thank you very much. And again, open to any questions, but I am truly grateful to be part of an organization that is having such significant impact, not just in Toronto, not just in Ontario, not just in Canada, but internationally. And folks, when we get out there, folks want to find out. I missed, oh have mercy. We also had this year what we added to our community prides. As you know, we have our seniors, youth, family, sober, dyke, and the list goes on, our trans rallies. But this year, in 2024, we added newcomers pride, and we're going to continue to build on that. So to all of our newcomers, queer newcomers that have, been part of our community, thank you. And we want you to know that we love you and appreciate everything that you do. Thank you.
Amazing remarks. Thank you, Kojo. I don't think I have anything to add to that. Open up the floor to questions. I'm just running a few minutes late, but want to make sure you have an opportunity for some questions. I don't see anything in the Q&A box. I see good comments. Acknowledgement of Kojo's leadership. I don't see any hands raised.
Ron, may I just raised my hand.
Oh, sorry. I was, yeah, okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just two quick things for the members to know. Pride 2024, we had 6 buses of Rainbow Seniors in the Pride Parade. And these are not just Rainbow Seniors from Toronto. We have groups from Southern Ontario. Rainbow Senior organizations are now signing up to come to the parade because it's accessible to them now. We are working on all of our accessibility challenges to make the parade more inclusive and welcoming. And the other piece that we must talk about is elections are coming up, both in Ontario and at some point at a federal level. And all of us here present, if we want to continue enjoying our human rights as rainbow identified folks, we have to ask our MPs and our MPPs and challenge them to take care of us and our human rights. So please get out there and learn what the issues are, ask your representatives how they're going to take care of us, and sign up to vote. Please, everybody here who is eligible to vote, please sign up to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. There is one question that has come through the Q&A box. Thank you for your comments, Kojo. You know, as I do, that space is getting tighter and tighter in the village. Any insights you can share for Pride Toronto's future footprint? Thank you. Go ahead, Kojo. Over to you.
Thank you. And this is a great question. And I have to say, these are ongoing conversations that we are constantly having with our city councillor and his office, Chris Moyse. And I can assure you that they're doing everything in their power to really ensure that we are not erased from the village, from that historical piece of community. And, so whether that is, ensuring that we're able to get Sankofa Square at a rate that is affordable to us, that is really, really important. Our goal is to continue. We still have Wellesley Stage, which is, a staple for the Black community, for Blockorama, but yes, so we're going to continue to work with our city councillor to ensure that those spaces are not all erased. And I can assure you that these are conversations that are ongoing, and I'm really happy that the city councillor recognized that. Because I have the mic, Grant, if I may also want to acknowledge all of our curators. We had over 30 curators that helped to curate this amazing, weekend that we have. So again, to all of our curators, thank you very much for continuing to ensure that your community and our community are represented.
Thank you, Kojo. I don't see any further questions in Q&A box or hands raised. Oh, here's one that just came through. And we'll take this as the last question because we need to move on to a break and then move on with the audited financial statements. So is there any way Pride Toronto can ensure that artists are being featured in social media posts, are being tagged and acknowledged? And maybe, go ahead, Kojo.
Great question, and this is definitely something. I know that our director of marketing, who manages that portfolio, is in the meeting. So definitely, I know that they're taking note of this, but I'm also taking note. And for this is again continue work in progress. Thank you for your suggestion, and we'll definitely flag it to the team.
Thank you, Kojo. Okay, we'll move on to a break and return at 7:05 on my computer. So we'll see you in a few minutes. Clock strikes 7:10. We're back. I'm going to pass this over to, sorry, our next item on the agenda is the presentation of the audited annual financial statements and subsequently the appointment of the auditor. I'm going to pass it over to Osmel to introduce us to our auditors. Osmo is the board treasurer. Osmo, are you back?
Osman is going to be there in 2
Hi,
seconds.
folks.
There he is.
How you doing? I'm so sorry about that, folks. It took me a while to get back on. Yes, I want to say thank you so much, folks, for joining us tonight. At the same time, I would like to introduce Crowe Silverman, the auditors who conducted Pride Toronto's financial audit for this year. Crowe Silverman is a respected firm known for its expertise and commitment to transparency in financial reporting. Representatives from Crowe Silverman will be presenting their findings to our membership, providing valuable insights into our financial performance and ensuring continued accountability to our community. Please, folks, join me in saying hello and listening to Crowe Silverman's representatives.
Thank you, Osmo. And the floor is over to Chandor and Rachel.
Thank you, Osmo and Grant, and good evening, everyone. My name is Chandor Gauthier. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the audit partner at Crowe Silverman. Joining me this evening is Rachel Cairns. She's the manager, and her pronouns are she, her. And tonight we're going to be presenting the audited financial statements for Pride Toronto for the year ended July 31, 2024. Our agenda for tonight will cover the audit report, contents, and our 2024 report, the 2024 audited financial statements, and then closing remarks. Following the closing remarks, we will open the floor to any questions, but please, if you could hold your questions until the end, just so we can ensure that we get through all of the information. It's also possible that some of your questions might be answered through the materials we are presenting. So we want to provide first some key information regarding the audit report and the audit process. So if we start on page 2 of the financial statements with the auditor's responsibilities, we can see that we're responsible to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the statements as a whole are free from material misstatement, but there is no guarantee that we will detect a misstatement if one exists, and there's no guarantee we will identify fraud if it exists. We do identify and assess risks of material misstatement, and we design and perform our audit procedures based on those risks. We also obtain an understanding of the internal controls of the organization, which are relevant to our audit. And we evaluate the accounting policies and estimates, the overall presentation, and the financial statement disclosures. Lastly, we communicate with those charged with governance, which would be your board, on any significant findings, including deficiencies in internal controls identified as part of our audit. So as part of our audit planning, we do set a dollar threshold, which is based on a percentage of total expenses. And this is what we call our materiality amount. Now, this dollar amount is used for our audit work and is also the amount that we believe to be significant to the users of the financial statements, which would be yourselves as the members and the board. If the statements were off by this amount, it could impact decisions that are made by the users. That would be considered a material misstatement. Now, the 2024 audit report for Pride Toronto was qualified, and a qualified opinion is very common for charities and nonprofits because of cash donations that are received by a lot of charities. And when the auditor can't obtain sufficient audit evidence over a particular balance, so in the case of Pride Toronto, it would be revenues earned from donations and fundraising, but it's not pervasive to the financial statements as a whole, we consider this to be a scope limitation. So we did have this qualification not only in this year's financial statements, but in the prior statements as well. And there are actually 2 scope limitations in the 2024 audit report, one for those cash donations, and then also one for the grant revenues prior to August 1, 2020. Now that scope limitation is a result of an inability to gain access to sufficient appropriate audit evidence over the eligibility of expenses for periods prior to August 1, 2020. So the financial statement for the prior years also included that same qualification. I'll now turn things over to Rachel, who will provide an overview of the financial statement figures for the year.
Thank you, Chandor. So we're now going to shift focus to the audited financial statements, and I could please ask anyone who's following along to turn to page 5, where we'll start with the statement of changes in net assets. So this is Pride Toronto's excess of assets over liabilities. And at July 31st, 2024, Pride Toronto had net assets of $346,000. This is down from $1.3 million last year due to the loss incurred in 2024 of $985,000. If we turn to page 6, we will look at this loss in some more detail. This is a statement of operations, which reflects all of the revenue and expense transactions incurred in the past year. There were total revenues of about $8 million in 2024, and the major streams for the organization continue to be sponsorship revenue, government funding, and permit and fee revenue. Overall, revenue did increase from 2023, mostly driven by the increase in sponsorship revenue, and other streams were consistent with prior figures. Included in that sponsorship revenue line is $2.7 million of contributed sponsorship materials and services. This is also known as in-kind or non-cash contributions. There is a breakdown of these contributions in note 7 on page 12, and last year this in-kind number was about $2.5 million. Pride Toronto incurred expenses of $8.9 million in 2024, and the top 5 expense categories are wages, festival infrastructure, artist fees, marketing, and special projects. And these 5 categories account for 72% of total expenses incurred in the year. So as you can see, overall expenditure did increase by about $1.3 million compared to last year. And there are many factors that can drive the year-over-year increase or changes depending on the category. But in general, the activities of the organization required more spending than seen in prior years. And although more revenue was generated in 2024, that increase was not proportional to the increase of expenses, and this creates a loss of $985,000. So this was the second year of operational losses for Pride Toronto, which is continuing to reduce that net asset balance that we first looked at. And we consider that balance the reserves of the organization. And because of this, as part of our audit process, we had to assess whether or not Pride Toronto would have the financial capability to continue operations to the end of fiscal 2025. We understand that management is taking steps to ensure a stronger 2025 financial year, including adjusting cash flow projections, cash flow management processes, and operating budgets based on our recommendations and on their own findings. We're going to defer to management and the board to speak further to these actions during the question period. Moving on to page 4, you will find the statement of financial position, also called the balance sheet. This is a summary of the organization's assets and liabilities at the dates July 31st, 2024 and July 31st, 2023. Total assets were approximately $1.8 million, which includes a cash balance of $65,000. And on page 7, you'll find the statement of cash flows, which will reconcile that $65,000 to all the inflows and outflows of cash during the year. You also notice there's a new line on the balance sheet in the liability section called bank indebtedness. In fiscal 2024, the organization accessed its line of credit to assist in funding operations. The details of this indebtedness are in note 4 on page 11, but in short, Pride Toronto owed the balance of $155,000 at year end, and this was subsequently repaid. Total liabilities amounted to $1.4 million in 2024, including the government funding payable of $726,000. This balance has a current and long-term portion, and the current portion will refer to amounts that are due within 1 year, while the long-term payable encompasses any amounts that are due beyond July 31st, 2025. Of this balance, the organization is required to repay $405,000 of the total payable, details of which are in note 5 on page 11. Lastly, the notes of the financial statements begin on page 8, and there were no significant changes to our disclosures this year. We'd like to conclude by personally thanking the Pride Toronto team for their efforts throughout the audit process. This is our 3rd year auditing the organization, and each year we are observing their efforts and dedication to improving the processes and controls in place. That concludes our presentation. Thank you very much for listening. And we will now open the floor to any questions.
Thank you, Chandra and Rachel. Questions from members, and there might not strictly be for the auditors, so we'll determine that. I don't see hands raised right now, but I do see one in the Q&A box. Has the board identified why in a year where revenues were up, Pride lost so much money? And if you have identified it, where are you going? What are you doing in 2025 so that this will not happen again in the current fiscal year? I'll just quickly share that first and foremost, we're over the last several years, we've seen costs significantly escalate. I mean, there is an example last year, or for example, where our cost of policing had doubled or quadrupled. Um, and that is true for other types of costs, festival infrastructure, costs of bringing artists over to the Pride Festival, things that draw people into the city. And this is our argument to the government, that if government does not make proportionate investments, and I'm talking about all orders of government, provincial, municipal, and federal, if you don't make the proportionate investments to Pride Toronto that other Pride organizations benefit from, other similarly sized, we will not be in a position to put on the level of excellence that we've been able to achieve in the festival, where we continue to attract a significant number of international tourists who are making investments into the local economy. Every year we do an economic impact study that identifies the economic benefits to the city, including tax revenues for these orders of government. I think this is a warning, as we have every year, but especially now, that if we do not see those proportionate investments, that we will need to scale back and potentially the economic benefit will be smaller. And that is something that all levels of government have to contend with. And it's unfortunate because the small amounts of money that we're asking generate exponentially more significant economic impact and tax revenue for these orders of government. Putting an extra $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, even $500,000 if you're the federal or provincial government, is peanuts compared to the economic benefit it generates. But if we're not able to get those investments, then we will surely have to scale back. Rest assured that the board is having these conversations with the staff leadership to determine where and how we're making these cuts, because we don't really have a choice. It's not sustainable to carry on another $1 million loss. And we've only been able to survive this year with over $300,000 in cash in our bank because of the prudent spending in past years where costs were also predictable. So I just share that with you. We are on top of it, concerned, but in a good place because of our past prudence and predictability on the costs related to the festival. Kojo, I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything more to that.
No, I think you did justice to it.
Mm-hmm. One more question in the chat and then one hand raised. Could you share what the auditors typically recommend as a minimum threshold, i.e. reserve amount? I think I missed if Rachel shared this part. So I'll pass it over to Chandra or Rachel. Oh, you're muted. Oh, no, never mind. Sorry. You're good. You're good.
Okay. There isn't a set threshold, really. I mean, most organizations, there's really two types of balances we would look at. There's the actual cash that you should have in the bank. And organizations typically will look to have 3 to 6 months of cash available for funding purposes. And then the other piece of it is the actual debt assets section. And that balance would typically involve accumulating amounts for things like special projects, capital acquisitions, so things like if you were going to move and you were going to have to spend significant monies as part of that. And then keeping track of how much things like severance, legals, et cetera, would cost if at some point there was a windup of the organization. So that's typically what we would see as far as the reserve in the net assets. But as I said, there's also the cash account to consider. And Pride, unlike some other charities, does not have a consistent inflow of cash throughout the year. So that 3 to 6 month amount that I'm suggesting for some charities isn't necessarily relevant to Pride because of the timing difference with funds coming in. So one of the ways the organization covers that off is ensuring that they have a credit facility available to them, so that if there is some late monies coming in from sponsorships or from government funding, for example, that maybe isn't coming in until after the festival, but costs have to be paid for before the festival, the organization is trying to make sure that the timing of the cash inflows and outflows matches a little bit better than it has in some years as well. I don't know if that answers the question.
I think it did, but hopefully we'll get a follow-up if not. And from a organizational perspective, specifically from a Pride organization perspective, this is a challenge and not exclusively experienced by Pride Toronto. All Pride organizations, I shouldn't say all, but many Pride organizations really do have challenges in building up reserve, because ultimately our revenue is generated by sponsorships and government grants, and that's generally the makeup of our funds. There is private fundraising that can sometimes provide that extra cushion, but it's difficult because we're not a charitable organization either. So, you know, the incentive for a charitable donation is less if you're not getting a tax credit, for example. So these are things that we need to consider, and the limitations that we're all working within as Pride organizations, Toronto and across, I want to say Canada, but certainly throughout North America. Kojo, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to add to this that one of the things that, again, the predicaments that we find ourselves in is that, so currently we're in the month of February, where we're beefing up. Our director of development is working hard to get all of these sponsorships on board. At the same time, the program manager is booking artists and signing contracts with artists. And, the operations team are looking at the infrastructure. So all of these things are happening at the same time. So we're projecting to bring in so much cash. However, we would not know until the end. So as a result, we now have to scale back. And as Grant alluded to, so we have to identify some areas where we have had to say we're going to have to reduce spending in this area. And as we continue month after month, and we're able to look at our forecast in terms of revenue, there might be an opportunity to increase in those spending. But this is one of the things that is very unique with festivals, is when you are heavily dependent on sponsorship month after month, you're hoping. So what we've done is that we've scaled back on our spending upfront to ensure that our spending actually falls in line with the exact income that comes in. We've also seen a huge decrease. And this is not just for us, where in the past we may have had, $300,000-$400,000 just in donations on the festival footprint. We have not seen that post-pandemic. The cost of, although we have not increased the cost of our beverages, people are not consuming as much beverage as they did in the past. So we've also seen a decrease in income there also. But again, I think, as Grant said, we're going to continue to watch and spend wisely as we move forward.
Thank you. Jason Amel, hand raised. I'll pass it over to you.
Hey, Jason, I'm prompting you to unmute if you want to go ahead. I'm just going to prompt you again, Jason, because you were unmuted, but we don't hear you. So please try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Sorry. I had a couple of questions. One is for the auditors. So I don't know if it's an error in the statements. The statement of operations, office admin, it says note 5, but it doesn't relate. And also in note 5, the amounts for government funding payable don't match the statements. So I'm just wondering why. And I had a second question after that.
Rachel, do we want to maybe pull that page back up?
No problem. I can share the statements.
So I'm referring to page 4. It doesn't match page 11, the amounts.
Or is it this page, Jason?
Yes, correct. So where it says 420,000.
Yes. So if we go to note 5 now, Rachel. So you'll see at the bottom there, it says, in addition to the above, the current portion of government funding payable includes 320,000, which is not subject to the fixed repayment terms. So the 320,000 plus that 100,000 on the July 31, 2025 line totals up to the 420, 485, 487, sorry.
Okay, got it now.
So some of the government funding is getting repaid over the long term. There was an audit done last year, the year before, by one of the funders. And as part of the repayment plan, it's $100,000 per year that's getting repaid. But
Right,
there is
yeah.
also some government funding that's repayable just as it hasn't been spent according to the terms, et cetera, which is that other 320,000.
Okay. And sorry, I had a quick second question for the board.
Go ahead.
Regarding the loss of nearly $1 million for this year. Obviously it's not the first time this has happened. We've recovered in the past. However, what I'm noticing is, and it's not very clear in the financial statements, is we spent a substantial amount of money in special projects. Even after in-kind donations, it adds up to almost $500,000 in additional spending. What exactly is special projects? Because it's not clear here at all.
Good question. I'll pass it over to Koja to answer that.
Thank you, Jason. So again, and this is a question that I got quite a bit of, even from some of our funders. And so the special project, that increase is funds in, funds out through the Hanlan's Friends of Hanlan's project. So we were the trustee for the Friends of Hanlan's. So these monies were not Pride Toronto's money. These were monies that we manage on behalf of Friends of Hanlan's. So that is why you saw that increase there in terms of special project. So it was funds in and funds that are going right back out specifically for the project.
And Kojo, can you share the estimated figure or the approximate figure of what was in and out?
You know what? I didn't. It's Amit. Amit, are you on?
Yeah, I'm on.
Okay.
So basically, we received $159,000 on the behalf of Hanlan project, and we spent $100,000 on their behalf, and 59,000 we have a reserve for coming years, which we will spend in 2025 fiscal year. And in terms of increase on special project, if you see it, there is an increase of in-kind value, which is 800,000, which is given by Frozen as a in-kind donation. That's part also increased this year as compared to last year. That ratio is drastically increased as compared to last year in current year.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So I did see that. However, there's still a substantial $500,000 increase even after you deduct the in-kind contributed materials and services. That's my question. 159,000 doesn't add up to $500,000. There's a substantial difference here. What exactly was this money spent on for special projects for 1.3 million minus 800,000?
So
if you minus 800,000, it's still 500,000.
Yeah, I will explain you. So we are receiving so many products from Johnson and Johnson. That's also the in-kind value, and they provide last year almost $300,000 in kind these products. That's also increase in special projects.
But is that money included in the 860 in-kind dollars?
No, it's a separate from 860. 860 from present, and there is
Sorry,
other.
if I can jump in here, I think we're just trying to get clarity on the expense line of $1.3 million. And
Exactly.
so I think it is important that we understand what was that money spent on. My understanding, what I'm hearing is $150,000 was, so take that off of the extra 500,000. There's another $350,000. Was that an escalation, an increase? We're talking about expenses, not the in-kind contributions made. So just hoping to get some clarity there. And Shandor has yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if I can just add a bit of clarity there. Out of that 1.3 million, I think what Kojo is trying to say, just to clarify, is that 860,000 of that is in kind, which means there's 860,000 in the revenue section, 860,000 in that special projects line, which does there is a year-over-year increase just in kind in that category of $600,000. So if we take that out, the increase is actually 250,000 year over year, 150 of which is the Hamlin project, which leaves, I think, another 100 grand, which is in various other projects and donations. Does that help?
Of which a lot of it covers our partnership with the Indigenous community, working with Indigique and others. So that's where the rest of a lot of the other special projects come out, because we have a financial commitment to working with the Indigenous communities.
Thank you. I think that provides a lot of clarity around the increase there. And thank you for that question, Jason. It's an important one that I know is not quite obvious when you read the financial statements. I think there are a number of questions here in the chat, so I'm going to go through them. Some are kind of going to merge them together. Just 1 second while I try to move things around here. All right. Okay. At which levels of government do you have to repay that 320K back to? I can just quickly respond to that, and that is the federal government related to one of the grants, and that was reported on at the last annual meeting. I think it was last year. And Kojo, could you provide clarity on which grant that was?
That was done through all of our Canadian Heritage grants. So it was not one particular grant. It was over three years. So it's the Department of Canadian Heritage is who we're repaying that amount to.
And related question, the 320K repayable, because it wasn't spent, is that reduction reflected in the level of government funding reported? For example, if your reported government gave 100K, but you have to repay 50K, was the bar graph adjusted to reflect that it was only a 50K investment?
No. So we continue to, again, when we apply for our grants, the government provide the grants based on their final decision. The repayment is not tied in any way to the grants that we receive. So if this year we receive so much from the government, from the federal government, and that does not, so they're not giving us $100,000 less. We have to, so most of that repayment, that funds that we use to do that repayment is coming from our fundraising, because the accounting for all grants are very specific, of which we cannot use their money to repay them.
Perfect, thank you. Was this repayment in regards to past issues with the financials? That's correct. Past issues with the grants that predate, certainly Kojo joining the organization, and which was well discussed over the last several annual meetings. Correct. I see that there's a question. Can you give us a sense of how sponsorship is going for this year compared to last, particularly on the private side? Maybe Kojo provide a high level.
Yes, no, definitely. And just want to let folks know that, last year our director of development joined us in January. We now have this person has been on board. We have quite a few new prospects that we're looking at, and we're continuing to identify new prospects as we continue to build relationship with our current sponsors. So if I tell you that we're seeing all stars and glitter at the end of the tunnel, I will be deceiving the membership. But this is work that the development team is continuing to do. If any one of you have an idea of a potential sponsor that you think we should approach, please don't hesitate to send that information to Membership of Pride. We will forward that to the Director of Development. So we welcome suggestions also to be able to continue to do this work. I have to say, despite the challenges that we have seen, we do have many sponsors that continues to come and support the 2S LGBTQ plus community and the work that we do year after year.
Thank you. Would the membership be able to inquire about updates in terms of the financial situation in the spring once there's more information available? A bit worried about the financial outlook and how it impacts artists and attendees.
I think it's I think it's a good ask, Grant. And as folks are fully aware that I do have, 2, sometimes 3 town halls every year. So one of those town hall could be in the spring, and one of the areas that we can focus on is to provide an update on where we are to date. So I am more than happy to commit to this tonight as part of my ED town hall.
Thank you, Kojo. It's a great idea. And we did one in November, so there weren't too many attendees, but it was posted online as well. So we do make this a regular thing. Has there been any change in senior leadership? Yes, our director of operations has moved on from the organization. They were incredible asset to the team over 5 years here at the organization, if not more. We're going to sadly miss them. And we're currently recruiting for the new director of operations. With that, we're okay, not too bad, 7:43. Well, let's come back at 7:48 and then we'll finish off the remaining. Oh, sorry, no, we're not done yet. We're gonna say thank you to Shandor and Rachel for their time, and then we're gonna move into the reappointment of the auditor. Thank you so much for joining us today and for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Not too excited there. All right. In the package, let me share my screen as well. Current slide. Right here. So the motion before you is to reappoint Crowe Silverman LLP as the auditor of the corporation to hold office until the close of the next annual meeting of the members at a remuneration to be fixed by the directors of the corporation, the directors being authorized to fix such remuneration. I'm going to stop sharing here. I'm going to move her and seconder. I see Osmel has moved, and the seconder is Glenn Knight. Thank you. I'm going in order of hands, so you got to be quick. Any questions on this motion? No? Okay, let's proceed on with the vote, Amanda.
Okay, excellent. So I'm now going to start that vote off. And if you have just joined us or if you have forgot where we access our voting, it's on the right-hand side of your screen. You should see that vote icon flashing because the vote is now live. Or if you're not seeing it, maybe you lost it with doing other things during the break, you should see that email that comes to you that says cast your vote now. Inside that email is a blue box that says vote in your meeting portal. When you click on that, it will open up your specific meeting link and you can cast your vote. Make sure you hit that next button in order to confirm, and we should be able to get those votes in quite quickly.
Thank you. And as we are voting, just a quick overview of what's next. We'll go over the board elections and hold the elections, of course. And then there are bylaw amendments and articles of amendment for discussion. I know it's a lot. And then any other business. And then that will bring us to the conclusion of the annual meeting.
Okay, excellent. We have about 30 seconds left. There's still a number of people that could vote, so please make sure you do cast your vote and hit that next button to confirm. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. So that vote is now closed, and I can share results with you in just one quick moment. Perfect. Okay. So this was for the reappointment of Crowe and Soberman LLP as auditor of the corporation. We had 60 votes in favor, 7 withhold, and 1 abstain.
Perfect. Motion carries. Thank you. And we will move on to a break and come back at 7:52. All right, 7:52. I know folks might be slowly starting to stream back in. We're going to get started. Just a few minutes behind, but nothing too bad. 1 second here, I'm going to show my presentation. Okay, next up are on our agenda are the election of new board members. Just a quick overview of the recruitment process. Every late October to November, we launched the recruitment process for to fill any vacancies on the board. We had quite a great response, 24 applications. We the board, I said the board, but we had a committee of board members interview 6 of the candidates. And we have moved forward with recommending 3, Amber, Gabriel, and Maria, for election. We did hold a Q&A session last week as well, for members to have an opportunity to engage with the candidates, because oftentimes there isn't that much time in these meetings because there's so much business to get through. And hope that you've been able to review that. We'll have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions tonight, and then we'll proceed on with the vote. And speaking of the vote, the motion, and you'll be asked for each candidate to vote for or withhold for each candidate. And for clarity, I think in the notice document, it says the close of the 2028 annual meeting of members of the corporation. It should be the close of 2027 annual meeting. The intent was, we were thinking the January 2028 annual meeting, but historically, the annual meeting date has always been for the prior year. So the intent was, and our bylaws state, it is 3 years basically for the term. So we will adjust the motion to 2027 annual meeting, because even if this were the case, our bylaws do not permit a 4-year term. So I hope you can indulge us with that adjustment. I just wanted to flag that. I'm going to ask in alphabetical order of first name to provide some quick remarks to introduce themselves to the membership. We'll do a short Q&A and then get into the vote. So first up is Amber. And I'll stop sharing my screen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amber E. I use pronouns she and they. As a candidate for the board of directors for Pride Toronto, I want to bring positive energy and a spirit of collaboration to the organization. I'm committed to giving back to this community that has given me so much. In this challenging time, I will work hard to ensure Pride Toronto remains a safe, inclusive, and welcoming space for everyone. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Amber. Next up is Gabriel.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the board for this opportunity. I'm very excited to be here with you, the members. My name is Gabriel Harkin. My pronouns are he and him. I'm a Nicaraguan refugee. I'm also an HIV advocate and 11-time marathoner. I have been living with HIV openly for over 10 years to help break the stigma and to show the world that HIV doesn't slow me down. I'm also a national ambassador with the Canadian Foundation for AIDS Research, and I use that platform to push for understanding while working with CanFAR to end the HIV epidemic in Canada. I come to you also having served on a previous board, the Pride Remembrance Association board, including 2 years as president and chair, which gave me valuable experience in governance and community leadership, which I plan to bring onto the Toronto Pride board. I'm passionate about volunteer work and making space for everyone in our community to feel safe, heard, and celebrated. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. And Maria, go ahead. You're on mute if you are. Oh, there you are. Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Diaz. My pronouns are she, her. I have been a licensed paralegal since 2013. I moved to Canada from Mexico as a refugee as well in 2008. I'm a Sapphic woman and I was a single parent for many years. I believe my experience gave me a unique perspective in understanding the different experience of those in our community. I'm passionate about supporting our LGBTQ plus community, especially refugees and newcomers. I'm excited to work with the Pride Toronto board to ensure we continue building a more inclusive, accessible, and accountable Pride. Representation matters, but can you really be represented without being heard? I look forward to working with the board to truly create accessible spaces addressing different forms of accessibility challenges. And one that is close to me is language barriers. I'm committed to supporting and expanding all initiatives that will help make Pride Toronto more accountable, inclusive, and equitable. So together we can drive meaningful and lasting change. And also at the same time, I'm eager to learn more about the organization financial landscape and work alongside the board to ensure we steer Pride Toronto in the right direction. Once again, thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Maria. All right, before we get into the Q&A, there are questions that appear to be more for the board. So the first one, why only 3 of 24? That's a lot of disqualified people. I wouldn't use the word disqualified. There are 3 vacancies for the board. It's been the practice of the board and many nonprofit organizations, I'd say in the community, but beyond the 2S LGBTQI plus community, just nonprofits in general, that an equal number of candidates are brought forward for the vacancies available. So yes, we did have to make some difficult decisions. We're trying to engage some of those qualified folks to be engaged in different ways at Pride Toronto. We don't want to see them go by any means, but we did have to make tough decisions at the end of the day. So I do offer that up. And a similar question here. In future, in consideration of democratic principles, would the board consider allowing the members to see and vote on all qualified candidates? We don't even know who the 21 other candidates were. Thank you for that question. And again, as a nonprofit organization, we have to strike a balance here. It's not feasible to simply present, let's say 50 people applied, 50 candidates for consideration. Not even a 3-hour annual meeting would be sufficient to elect those board directors if that were the case. We as a board are elected on behalf of the membership to shoulder a level of responsibility to vet candidates who apply and bring forward our recommendations. This is a recommendation of the entire board, of course. And the other piece I would add is any candidates who were not recommended as part of the board slate are welcome to get their names on the ballot with 10 signatures of members asking for their inclusion on the ballot. So it's not a done deal if the board chooses to go a different direction. They do have recourse to be added to the ballot. And again, in trying to strike that balance, we do hold the Q&A session with board candidates generally a week prior to the annual meeting. So again, that members can engage with the candidates that we have suggested moving forward with. Any questions for the candidates? Are you saying that? Are you saying none of the other 21 candidates wanted to be on the ballot? Again, this is less of a question for candidates and for us. My response here is that I'm sure that all 21 candidates wanted to be on the ballot. However, the process is if the board does not move forward with their candidacy as part of the board slate, these candidates would need to get 10 members from 10 Pride Toronto members to sign a letter requesting to be on the ballot. And it's not so much a request. If you get 10 members to to be on the ballot, then you have to be on the ballot. So those are the rules as per the bylaws, and that I don't believe have changed since I joined the board 4.5 years ago. Other questions? Why do you not allow people to run from the floor during this meeting? Again, the election process is in the bylaws entrusted to the board to undertake. We vet candidates, ensure that we're balancing the skills that we need across different expertise, lived experience, professional experience, to ensure that we have a board that has that experience to undertake their fiduciary duty to the organization. And we've been quite successful at bringing in diverse folks from across our communities to be on the board. And that's a process that seemed to have worked very well over the last couple of years. What are some of the changes? Oh, okay, perfect. That's a question for the candidates. Were the 21 candidates given sufficient time to get signatures to be added to the ballot? The answer is yes. We informed them of our decision in mid-December. They have up to no later than, I believe, 48 hours before the annual meeting to demand to be on the ballot and get those signatures. So over a month time was given to them for that process. And were they made aware in time? This is part of our typical spiel, if you will, when we are interviewing candidates about what the process is. Are rejected candidates made aware that they can? Sorry, I think I just answered that question. Okay, question for the board directors or candidates. What are some changes you would like to see in the future at Pride Toronto? So we'll start in reverse order. Maria, Gabriel, then Amber. Maria, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your question, Shiman. Yes, so I'm very excited to be here and learned a lot from the board. One of the things that I would like to see is more refugees and newcomers being involved, more people celebrating their accent, and obviously trying to break down barriers for language barriers and other accessibility issues. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Go ahead, Gabriel.
So I think Kojo talked about this earlier, and I think just seeing the impact that Toronto Pride has on the global stage, I think is so impactful. And I would love to see this continue to grow. I think Toronto has such an amazing opportunity and a privilege to be a beacon for so many other cities of what Pride can look like, of what potential they have. And I think to continue to support other cities so that then they can be in a position to continue to support further. I think we can just continue to be a big movement in the global fight against towards our rights and towards acceptance of all members under our LGBTQI community.
Thank you. Amber?
Hello, everyone. My apologies that I forgot to turn on my camera. Okay, so with 15 years of experience in law and governance, I currently work for the Ontario government. I would work hard to increase transparency and communication within the board and our community, ensuring that the decision-making process is clear and inclusive, as most of our community members, they want to see. I will also make sure that members feel supported, especially those who feel they are underrepresented. And I will value their voices and make them become part of our conversation. Above all, my goal would be to strengthen Pride Toronto's impact in Toronto and in Canada, ensuring that it continues to be a space of celebration, advocacy, and support for all members of our community. Thank you for your question.
You're muted, Grant.
Oops. Going back to questions here. Sorry. Many in our community feel that Pride is just a party weekend and not about advocacy. How do you feel about this, speaking from my 25 years here? So let's start in the middle with Gabriel, then we'll go over to Amber and then Maria. Go ahead, Gabriel.
So that's a very good question. Thanks for bringing that up. As someone who, when I first started doing Pride, it was about partying and it was just that, But after I have, matured and really come to accept myself as a queer person, I've learned that Pride is so much more than that. And I think this is why I volunteered to do the work I do. It's why I joined the Pride Remembrance Association and was on that board for 4 years, because I was able to combine my pride with my passion for running. And it was a different way for me personally to celebrate and express myself in something that I love that wasn't the usual party per se, right? So when I was on the board at the PRA, which organizes the run that you see on the Saturday morning that runs in the village through Queen's Park, we ended up making it a sober run. There used to be alcohol, now there wasn't, just to try to give people a different kind of pride, because I think it's important not to look at it just from one angle, not to look at it from the angle that we see in the media, but to really cater to what our community needs, right? It needs a space where everyone feels safe, where everyone feels celebrated. On the run, we ended up having a kids run that we started. And we were always trying to find ways to make the space more and more inclusive and more available to as many members of our community as possible. So I think Pride Toronto can also strive to continue that and to make sure that everyone feels included and nobody feels left out.
Thank you, Gabriel. Amber and then Maria. Amber, go ahead. You might be muted. There you are.
Hello. So my short answer to your question, which I think is a really good question, is that I don't think Pride Toronto is a party. For myself, as an immigrant and Asian queer woman, I feel really grateful that Pride Toronto gives me this opportunity as a candidate for the board of directors. Moving forward, I think it's essential to prioritize intersectionality and non-judgment in all our efforts. For example, all of our board of directors will not be judged as disqualified or qualified. So that should not be a question. So this means that we should recognize and respect the diverse identities and experiences with our community, including those impacted by some global conflicts. And I think that if we can ensure that our actions and advocacy are inclusive, especially acknowledging the complexity of individuals' lived experience without judgment, that will make our organization a better organization for everyone in our community. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Amber. And Maria.
Thank you so much. I also thank you for your question, and I do have to echo a lot of what the other two candidates said. Also, from a personal experience, I am a refugee from Mexico, and the first time I experienced Pride for me was just not a party. It was a place where I felt safe, or a place where I felt celebrated for the first time, and that gave me, like a platform to fight, to feel seen, to be visible for the first time. So yeah, over time, working with refugees and newcomers, I see a lot of people that go through the same experience, and it's such a joy to know and to see that people are celebrating Pride for the first time.
Thank you, Maria. Last question. I'm not sure I understand it. Which part of the LGBTQ plus community do you personally focus on that isn't currently? I'm trying to interpret what this question means. Are there parts of the community where you're doing work that might not otherwise get attention from our community, the more marginalized parts of our community is how I think I interpret it. So why don't I leave that with the candidates? I'll start with Amber, then Maria, then Gabriel. Go ahead, Amber.
Thank you for your question. So I believe in terms of the marginalized members in our community, I recall that last week as a co-chair of the idea committee in my branch, I hosted an event of trans awareness, and I believe that in this challenging time, we should increase, we should foster a culture of empathy, understanding, and open more dialogue among our members. Therefore, we can better support those who are often feel marginalized and ensure that everyone in our community feels seen, heard, and respected. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Gabriel, go ahead. Oh, no, sorry, Maria, then Gabriel.
Hi, can you see me and hear me?
Yes.
There you go. Yeah, thank you so much again for your question. I will say I identify or support more the refugee just because of my line of work. I will say I identify as a Sapphic woman. I'm also a single parent. I was a single parent for many years, and if I understood the question correctly, these are the communities that I will directly be representing, but regardless of that, I support the diversity of our community. So, yeah.
Thank you, Maria. And Gabriel, last word.
I'm definitely passionate about amplifying the voices of those living with HIV, particularly within our community. I think it's something that is, I would say, even almost forgotten just because of how advanced the and good the treatment has become. However, the truth is that 1 in 10 Canadians are living with HIV and don't know they have it. So that statistics brings to light the fact that HIV is still an epidemic in Canada and it's still here and it still needs to be talked about, which is why I share my story to show that, you know, to encourage people to get tested and to also work with CanFAR to provide resources for the marginalized communities that are disproportionately affected by HIV, like, for example, Indigenous communities or people in rural areas. So that's definitely my area of focus. And I think coming with that lived experience will allow me to advocate for other marginalized groups. I may not understand them, but part of why I'm here is also to learn about these other groups and how I can stand up for them and how I can support and bring their voices to the table.
Thank you, Gabriel. Okay, we can now proceed on to the vote. And Amanda, just a flag, can you make sure to adjust the motion to read the 2027 annual meeting? And for members' benefit, what that means is the term will be up, if they're elected, in January 2028. So that's 3 years. In January 2028, we will host the 2027 annual meeting. We just want to make sure that that is adjusted in the motion, and we can proceed on with the vote.
Currently, the term isn't listed on the motion. Is that okay? It's just their approval of their election.
Okay. Yeah. I think we've made it clear in the presentation, so that's fine.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So are we okay to move forward, or we need motions?
This is an election, so I don't think, well, yeah, no, I don't think we need a motion because there is no motion here. It's just the election of candidates.
Perfect. Okay. Okay, so what is going to happen now is that we are going to have each individual candidate is going to have their own vote or voting page, but we're going to launch excuse me, launch them all at the same time. So when you click on the next button, it will provide you with the next candidate's voting page, and you can go ahead and cast your vote. So it's very important that you make sure you click on that next button, and we might need an extra minute or so for this, just because there are a couple more steps that you'll have to take. So let me know if you're having any difficulties. I do see lots of votes that are starting to come in, so I appreciate that. If you are relying on the email, you'll have to just go to each one that was just sent out for you to cast your vote for each candidate.
And I just voted by email. Once you vote for one candidate, the screen will take a second to load, and then it actually does move on to the next candidate. So
Perfect.
you might not need to go back to your email, but if you do have issues, then yes, please go back to your email.
Great, thank you, Grant.
Are the numbers looking, Amanda?
We're looking pretty good. I think we have less than a minute left for each of them, and we have significant votes submitted, so we should be able to close out in about 40 seconds and announce results.
And I just see a comment here around screens keep disappearing. Your best bet, each individual motion or candidate, sorry, you should get a separate email for Gabriel's vote, for Amber's vote, and for Maria's vote. So if you vote for one and then nothing is loading, then just go back to your email and open the next vote, and that way you should be able to see the ballot that you need to vote.
Okay, that vote is now closed for each of those candidates, and I'm just going to get the results ready for us. Okay, and sharing the results on screen. For Amber, we had 57 for and 19 withhold and 2 abstain. And just scrolling for Gabriel, 58 for, 9 withhold, and 5 abstain. And then for Maria, 51 for, 17 withhold, and 3 abstain.
Thank you. With those results, all 3 candidates are elected to the board until the 2027 annual general meeting. Okay, next up is everyone's most exciting topic. Let's share my screen here. And I just want to flag in other business that our executive director would like to get back to the question around special projects. I think they have additional numbers for insight. So we know that's an important question. So we'll get to that in other business. Just want to make sure that that you're aware that that's coming. Okay, articles of amendment and bylaw amendment. So we did have the opportunity to present this last week as part of the board Q&A session, our board candidate Q&A session. We spent some time at the latter part to go over the changes, but I'll just give a high level overview here. So the articles of amendment, think of it, think of it like our constitution or whatever. That's probably the wrong word to use, but um, it lays out a number of focus areas of focus for Pride Toronto. And there are provisions in our articles of incorporation, that's the actual formal name, that suggests that Pride Toronto is a charity. We are not a charitable organization. We don't, there are limitations to what charitable organizations can do, such as, needing to be very careful about political activity, which we don't typically do as a political organization. And we want to make sure that we are not experiencing any limitations to align with our mandate as basically a political organization. So removing that piece would align with our mandate as an organization. And then the other concern is that charity status brings with it a number of tax obligations under charity-specific legislation, which we don't observe because we are not a registered charity, but we don't want our articles of incorporation to suggest that we are. So the articles of amendment and the details of the language are in the notice package, are meant to move us away from this, and we're strictly a not-for-profit organization that does not carry out charitable activities. Bylaw amendments, and there were a lot. I'm not going to lie, there was a lot in the package. Our lawyers at Fasken were very kind enough to color code what they considered to be more cleanup changes, and there's a lot of cleanup changes, and then in different color highlight the more substantive edits. And I think in yellow, if I'm not mistaken, there are explanatory notes there. That is not meant to be included in the final approval. That's just for easier review of why the changes were being made if an explanation was warranted. I'll highlight the substantive changes. So director qualifications, clarity around board terms, and provisions to address ongoing absences from meetings. So in the past, not currently, but in the past, there have been times when board directors just simply didn't show up to meetings. And that's not fair to anyone on the board who are trying to do good work. And it's not fair to the members who are interested in potentially being active board members. Taking up space and not contributing is not acceptable in any organization. And so if there are 3 consecutive absences from a board meeting without leave, so if there's a medical reason, the board approves that reason, there's documentation. There are, of course, exceptions to this rule, but if I'm just not showing up and I'm not telling you why, then after 3 meetings of doing that, I'm no longer qualified to be on the board. Board composition. So our bylaws state that employees cannot be board members. So this piece is just to clarify that we were referring to the executive director as an ex officio member of the board. The intent wasn't to suggest that they are a voting member, but that they had the right to be at the meeting. But to ensure absolute clarity, these changes that we're proposing is to remove that ex officio status that might, in some cases, suggest that the executive director is a board member, but clarify that they have the right to participate in board meetings with exception to any topics that would present a conflict of interest, such as the executive director's performance review. So the intent of that language has not changed. It's just changing the actual language to ensure absolute clarity on the board composition piece. Indemnification. These changes are largely to align with the language in Ontario's Not-for-Profit Corporations Act. So it isn't substantive in the sense that there's anything different here in terms of indemnifying board members, but it was a substantial change because a whole section was basically replaced. So just wanted to call that out there. But in substance, the indemnification clause doesn't really change. And then proxies, clarifying that only members can hold proxies. As you might know, we go through a pretty I wouldn't say involved process, but we do have a process for membership approvals. We want to make sure that this space that we share is safe for the communities that we are a part of. And so ensuring that only members can hold proxies prevent outsiders where we don't have any documentation on who they are, what their intent might be from holding proxies. They're welcome to sign up as members, of course, and fill out the application, ensuring that they are aligned with our mission, vision, and values, providing their contact information, and that way, then they can certainly get engaged. So there's no barriers from them from participating, but we just want to make sure that non-members don't take up space that should be meant for vetted members of the organization. The motions, sorry, let me just get a note here. And just a flag on indemnity, we've expanded the scope of who is indemnified, so to include former directors and officers, which is permitted by the Ontario Not-for-Profit Corporations Act. So, if you sue me for a decision when I'm not on the board, though I acted in good faith, and I just use me, it could be anybody, this indemnification should continue to be covered and shouldn't just be subject to the timing of when a certain party is suing me. So we want to make sure, and really the idea here is to protect board members and incentivize them to being on a board. If board members know they're at risk of being sued for anything and everything, knowing that these costs won't be covered by themselves is a reassurance and incentive to be on the board. Of course, if you act in bad faith on a board, then you're open to getting sued and you potentially would not be indemnified. So we still have a level of responsibility here to ensure that we are meeting our fiduciary duty to serve the organization and ask all the right questions, provide the correct oversight, listen to experts when they're providing advice, like our auditors, like our lawyers, and if we're following all of those steps and for some reason we get into an issue, then we would be indemnified. But if I ignore my lawyer, if I ignore the auditor, that's when I personally would get in trouble and can be open to getting sued. So that's kind of what this provision deals with. The motion language is here, but all of it refers to the changes that are in the notice package because these are very long resolutions. They're all special resolutions that require 2/3 approval. So one for the articles of amendment and one for bylaw amendments. So I'm going to take a pause. I see that the chat is active. Sorry, not the chat. The Q&A box, not as active as I thought. Will there be another board member call out if a board member gets kicked out for chronic absenteeism? So that would be a determination of the board. The board does have a right to, and has the power to appoint someone to take the place of a vacancy, a midterm vacancy, or they can choose to leave it vacant and then open it up for election at the next annual meeting. A lot of it depends on timing. Like if someone were to resign next month, it's not feasible to hold an election then and there. We would either appoint someone to fill that remaining term or wait it out and then present that position for election at the next annual meeting. So, but I can't predict what future boards will do. I just want to make sure you know what the options are. Any other questions for the bylaws? I know it was a lot. And it's pretty heavy because we're all not lawyers. I'm not a lawyer. But I like boring stuff like this, so I am an outlier. I get it. Okay. Not seeing any. Oh, here's a question. I'd like to address the proposed change on page 25, which addressed proxies to members of Pride Toronto. The intent of this change is being framed as a safety issue, but has there been any documented concern about non-member proxies in the past? My concern is that this change creates barriers for disabled members who rely on advocates, caregivers, or support persons who may not be members, limiting proxies to members excludes essential supports and could prevent some members from fully participating, which seems inconsistent with Pride's values of diversity, equity, and inclusion and community. Could we reconsider this aspect of the amendment? I would say that in response to that, support persons are welcome to join as members. They can be as active or inactive as they wish. We can certainly work with those that have accessibility needs to, for example, let's say we're in an in-person meeting, they're welcome to attend the meeting. They just can't vote. So it isn't a matter of necessarily excluding those supports. The intent here is, if a disabled member is not able to attend a meeting, that the proxy holder would be a member of Pride Toronto. And presuming that they require a proxy, that means that individual member is not attending the meeting. So it's different. Like, again, if that member who requires accessibility accommodations is attending the meeting, they are welcome to bring their support person if needed. And so that's why we do call outs for accessibility accommodations. And we would certainly accommodate that, whether it's virtual or in person. But I think what doesn't really make sense here in the question is if that member is not attending, then they wouldn't be in this space to vote. The intent is to ensure that a vetted member of Pride Toronto can vote in their stead. Comment on a question. Kudos to the board on the package sent to members and the bylaw changes. Thank you for the explanations. Try our best. It is a lot. I acknowledge that. Edie is not a member of the board, but is expected to attend meetings as part of employment. That is correct. It is the executive director is accountable directly to the board, and they are responsible for managing staff. So no other staff has that same responsibility. It is the expectation that the ED be at board meetings. And if they're not at board meetings, then that's another question, of course. That the board would need to deal with in terms of their performance. But all to say, I think it's important to note that Kojo has been a very active member in our discussions, very forthcoming with information when there are requests either at meetings or between meetings via email. So the board and the executive director have a very good working relationship. What if they do not have a relationship with another Pride member? So I would say that in this situation, an individual can speak to the board on potential options. Ultimately, the proxy form will include things like, well, as a proxy form does, the different motions and how to vote. So just because I hold someone's proxy doesn't mean I get to vote however I want. I can do so only for motions that are not listed in the proxy form. So yeah, there's a tricky balance there. But if for some reason someone has an opposition to a particular candidate for election, they can vote withhold. That vote cannot change. So there's a balance between the two. And if a disabled member requires accommodation, then we can work with them to determine what that could look like. And in practice for other nonprofits, typically the default is the chair. However, we do note in our bylaws that only one member can hold one proxy. So there's that to consider. Do we amend it so that the chair holds it, or find a different way to accommodate? I mean, we're not going to suggest that change here and now, but that's food for thought moving forward. Should we need to reopen that discussion? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised or anything in the chat. So let's, Amanda, proceed with the articles of incorporation, the the motion. Oh, no, let's not proceed yet. Can I get a mover and seconder for the motion on the articles of incorporation? Glenn Knight moves, seconded by Jason Mel. Thank you. Now, and might as well get the mover and seconder for the bylaw amendment. So can I get a mover and seconder? I'm not going to pronounce the name correctly. My apologies. Agbaranwen Iyare and Henry Dyke, mover and seconder. Thank you. Over to you, Amanda.
Great, Grant. Do you want me to run these both at the same time or complete one and then run the second one?
We can do both at the same time.
Perfect.
I think it worked well with the board election too. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're now going to go ahead and make those votes live. So just as before, you would go to your meeting portal page. There are 2 votes available. So there is the approving the articles of amendment vote, and then when you hit the next, it should load the amendment to bylaw number 1. So please do go ahead and cast your votes for each of those items. Excellent. There's about 30 seconds left for that vote to be open. We do still have some votes to collect, so if you have not yet voted, make sure you hit that next button to confirm.
And while we're doing that, I see Samson, your hand is raised. So I think that was part of the movers moving and seconding. So if you or perhaps someone get calm, can lower it. And then if you do have a question in other business, feel free to raise your hand. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I just don't want to get all confused later.
Okay, thank you everyone. That vote has now closed. So I'm going to go ahead and share the results in just one moment. All right, so for our first vote, which was approving the Articles of Amendment, we had 53 votes in favor, 6 against, and 1 abstain. And for the amendment to bylaw number 1, there were 53 in favor and 3 against. You're muted, Grant.
Thank you, Amanda, twice for the vote and for reminding me about my mic. As a reminder, special resolutions require 2/3 approval. So the articles of amendment are approved, and the special resolution to amend bylaw number 1 is also approved. Thank you for your engagement on this piece, and thank you for those many great questions. Okay, we're going to move on to other business. I'm going to pass it first to Kojo, just to provide an overview of the special projects expenses, and then welcome additional questions. Go ahead, Kojo.
Thank you, Grant. And sorry for if we sort of did not answer the questions the way that folks, we did get a few questions after, so we thought, let's just get it over with here, because others might be thinking the exact same thing. So just to give folks a breakdown, and this is not by the penny, so under the special projects, community engagement, so this includes our Community Connect, this includes many of our community prides. There is just around 42,000 in that line under special projects. The work that we do with Indigiquare, and in terms of, again, reconciling some of the harm that has been caused to the Indigenous community, we're looking just around $77,000. The work that we do with Two Spirit Toronto, so again, so that folks get the context, we distributed 54,000 to Two Spirits Toronto, but this was funds in, funds out. The grant to facilitate the powwow for 2023, those funds came into our account after the festival. So as a result, those funds were distributed in last year's budget. We also the Handlands project. So that 54,000 was 54,000 in, 54,000 out. The Handlands project was just around 100,000 in and out. We also partnered with Tourism Thailand, which saw a bunch of Thai queens visit us in Toronto for the festival. So there was a contribution of 45,000 for that. So again, 45,000 in, 45,000 out. The small pride support, so that refers to our International Impact Fund. That is just around $18,000 for that project. And then we have our in-kind, Kenvu Johnson & Johnson was just around $86,000. So that kind of a give, $860,000. So that sort of gives folks a sense of what are some of the things that are sort of in that bucket on the special project. So it is our truth and reconciliation portion of continuing that work with the Indigenous community. It is our community engagement piece, our International Impact Fund, special relationships that we build, as one example being with the Thailand folks. So hopefully, this answered your questions. Thank you, Grant.
Thank you. I did see somewhere in the chat a message sent to me, and it's good they didn't miss it. It was a questions under membership email. I'm asking if you could host a two-spirited march where we march down Church Street specifically for them only, where they are marching. Perhaps can be answered during other business. Certainly welcome that feedback. It's something we can explore with our partners at Two-Spirited People of the First Nation and Indigiquare. As you know, we also are committed to having Indigenous and Two-Spirit folks lead the main parade, with exception to Dykes on Bikes, just logistically, and they do make a contribution back to the community. So I just wanted to share that piece as well. That is required of us, and as part of our memorandum of understanding with the two groups. Okay. Chat question. Oh, that was just a thank you in the Q&A box for that explanation, Kojo. Very helpful. And it goes without saying, we too were like, whoa, that was a big difference from last year, from this year. So the board did ask those questions as well and got a satisfactory answers, of course. But it's important that everyone here also understands what the context and the explanation is behind the special projects line item. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised or Q&A box questions. Going once, twice, 3 times. I do not see on the agenda a closing. I would more than welcome Dr. Ruth, before we do the formal motion to terminate the meeting, to rejoin us to close the meeting. And we'll make sure that's in the agenda moving forward. It's not typically something we have included, but we more than welcome it. So, and we can all see you because I don't have a presentation shared. So thanks for coming back, and over to you.
I've been sitting here with you all this time. But one of the teachings that I know many board members have had, both by, other Indigenous people that you engage with my wife, Blue, is that when we open acknowledging ancestors, we close by asking them to return to that spirit realm so that when we conclude business, they've sat with us as I asked ancestors and acknowledged ancestors to come. It is now always my responsibility to thank them and give thanks for their guidance, their support, their hands on our backs, right? That's what they've been doing. They've been sitting with us with their hands on our backs. And so I just wanted to ask them to to travel back to their space, to travel back home so that we will see them again, but we know that they don't need to stay with us at this moment, but we're grateful for what they've done so that this meeting could be conducted in a respectful, kind, gentle way where, community has built more than it was built a few hours ago. And so I want to thank you for being here and for doing this work, and for bringing your whole self, and all the people that you represent and care for into this space. And know that as we adjourn, we adjourn with pride, right? The good work of pride should be about the pride. This is a political understanding, and when Kojo and the board talk about building honest relationships with Indigenous community, I'm not here as a token. I know that. I know that I am not here as a token. And that's not always how it feels as an Indigenous person. And so I'm grateful and I'm thankful for Pride Toronto. You know, Earlier when we were doing all the tech checks that not everybody got to see, my children came running in to wave and say hello to board members and to Kojo because they, as queer children, feel safe. And that's what Pride is supposed to be about, creating a political space where we feel safe. And so I thank you. And I ask that we travel gently moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ruth, and we are very grateful and thankful for you and everything you do to support not just Pride Toronto, but more importantly, the 2S LGBTQI plus community. Thank you so much. Chi miigwech. Okay, I'm going to end on a boring note because we have to. This is the motion. I'll skip through some of these slides now because they're done. The motion to terminate the 2024 annual meeting. I'll pass it over to Amanda.
Do we need a mover and seconder?
Yes, we do. I'm getting tired.
Yes.
Can I get a mover and seconder? I'll get rid of this presentation now. It's pretty short. Sorry, 1 second here while I look at the participants. And we see Agbaranmwen Iare and Byron Jr. as a mover and a seconder. You two are very quick.
Okay, great. We're going to go ahead now and launch that last vote. You guys did such a great job. I appreciate you all so much. So the vote for the motion to terminate is now live. Please go ahead and cast your vote. And I just want to say thank you for allowing us to participate in your AGM again this year. We have a short time clock, so if you're still with us, please go ahead and make sure you hit that next button to confirm. Okay, that vote has now ended, and I will just quickly put those results up on the screen for us. Here we are. We had 38 votes in favor and 5 against and 1 abstain.
Thank you. With those results, the 2024 annual meeting is terminated. I just want to echo some of the messages in the chat room. Thank you for everyone who's supporting this meeting, board, staff, ASL interpreters, the live captioner, Dr. Ruth for joining us, our lawyer at Faskin, Sophie, and of course our others who are not here anymore, but Shandor and Rachel for everything they've done leading up to and during the annual meeting. And of course, all of you for being engaged members. I look forward to continuing to connect with members throughout the year, and of course, especially during Pride Month in June.